Welcome, friends, to another episode of Dan Tremblay Music. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're getting a little nostalgic. Going through a bunch of our CDs, all of our CDs. CDs are round things that have music on them. Not everyone knows that anymore. Anyway, my wife and I used to work at a record store here in Canada, HMV, His Master's Voice. That's how we met. That's where we fell in love, met a lot of fantastic people, have a lot of amazing memories. So we're archiving all of our old CDs, and I came across this puppy, this bad boy right there. Ooh. Dan Tremblay, lounge pianist. And it just kind of got me thinking about how much has changed in music over the years. And I had this kind of CD wall display that holds 9 discs. And I've had it for the longest time, and I'm like, I should pick 9 of my favorites, maybe 9 of the most influential albums of my life. And I thought I'd go over them and talk a little bit about it and share some personal stories. So let's get to it. Number 1, I can't remember if it's the first CD I ever got, but definitely one of the first CDs I ever got, and it is In Excess Kick. Okay, In Excess, just an incredible band. Michael Hutchence, probably one of the last real rock stars. The last of the rock stars when hip-hop drove the big cars. He was just that guy, just an incredible talent, amazing singer. The band is amazing. The production, it's just kind of like you've never heard these guys. And recently, their a live performance was finally remastered and put out on Blu-ray and digital, and probably one of the best concert videos I think I've ever seen. Just astounding. This was the album. You know, Guns in the Sky, New Sensation, Devil Inside, Need You Tonight, Never Tear Us Apart. Like, come on. That's all on the same album. Okay, In Excess was just one of those extraordinary, still are one of those extraordinary bands, but of course we've lost the great Michael Hutchence, and dude was a real rock star. He was the real guy. So one of the first CDs that I've ever picked up in my life. These are not necessarily in a particular order. Next up we have Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Texas Flood. So my older brother, who used to put me through all kinds of torturous things as a younger child, but I won't get into that right now. He's watching. He knows what he did. He had a bunch of cassettes kicking around, and cassettes, if you don't know what a cassette is, then I think most of the people watching this channel know what a cassette is. So I was kind of thumbed through and checked them out, and I can't remember if it was Texas Flood or one of the other albums, but Steve Ray Vaughan put it on. I listened to Mary Had a Little Lamb, I think it was, and I looked at it. Before I put it on, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Mary Had a Little Lamb, really? And I put it on, and it was mind-blowing. It's one of those mind-blowing experiences. Steve Ray Vaughan, again, lived an extremely short life, like a lot of these incredible musical icons do. But while he was here, he burned like a shooting star. And the tone, you know, I know that everyone's, you know, there's a lot of copying going around, and a lot of people trying to emulate the style, and some people do really well, but there was something about the way Stevie could play one note that could just stop anything, could stop traffic. Just an incredible experience. I've become just this massive, colossal fan. Sadly, as I'm going through this list, I realize that a lot of these people are no longer with us. So gone too soon, but his music lives on forever. his version of Little Wing, which is not on this album, on another album by Jimi Hendrix, is just mind-blowing. If you haven't heard Little Wing by Steve Ray Vaughan, go and listen to it right now. Stop watching this video. Enlighten yourself. Number 3. What we got here? We got the purple one, Prince. I became just a colossal Prince fan probably around the time maybe that the Tim Burton's Batman soundtrack came out, which a lot of people didn't necessarily like. But I think if you go back and you listen to that album, which I believe came out after 1999, if I'm not mistaken, and the producers were looking for something along the lines of 1999. There's some great cuts on that album, and Bat Dance, come on, you go and find me something that's more original than Bat Dance. It was a work of absolute genius. Prince was just, make no exception, no doubt about it, absolute genius all the way through. Not in necessarily only because of the music that he created, but because of the number of instruments that he played so flawlessly. You're not supposed to be able to do that. You're not supposed to be able to write music, produce your own music, play every instrument on the record, and play the most blistering guitar solos that anyone had ever heard since probably Jimi Hendrix. It's just not supposed to happen, let alone putting on, high heels and doing splits on stage. Saw Prince twice. The second time was in Toronto, and we had second row seats because we joined the fan club. And he came out on the catwalk, and of course, it was mind-blowing. If he had reached forward and we had put our hand out, we could have shaken his hand. That's how close we were. Almost, my wife and I were kind of freaked out. We almost didn't want to make eye contact. Because like, oh my God, what if we throw him off by looking at him? And we're like, oh, we're not going to throw him off. It's Prince. How are you going to throw him off? Genius. Absolute genius. Again, gone too soon, but he's left his mark on music and a lot of style. I'm not going to name any names. You know who I'm talking about. You hear the music, and come on, Prince did it first. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Moving on. The Boss. Okay? Bruce Springsteen. Probably didn't start listening to Springsteen until The Rising came out, and I didn't quite get that album when it first came out until I realized that, all the stories about 9/11, and then it really hit me, and then I just kind of went off on this adventure and just became a colossal Springsteen fan ever since. Darkness on the Edge of Town, to me, is probably his most definitive album, and it's intense, it's raw, and there's just a real edge on, I'd say edge, Darkness on the Edge of Town. Of course there's an edge. It's just one of those fantastic albums. He's made so many. He's just one of those incredible storytellers. He's more of a poet than anything else. And his music is really shaped a lot about the music that I try to create, which might surprise you if you've heard some of my stuff because it doesn't sound anything like Springsteen. But deep down, somewhere in there's The Boss. Also, what can you say about the E Street Band? One of the greatest bands of all time. Mind-blowing. But Springsteen can still pull it off in a solo setting too. We've seen the E Street Band a couple of times. We've also seen Bruce Springsteen solo, and just a piano, an acoustic guitar, and a harmonica, and just captivates the audience. He's the boss. What are we gonna say? Next up, what we got here? Now this was a tough one. Okay, U2 Achtung Baby. Now, if you were to say what was the most defining moment or defining album of U2's history, you'd have an instant argument between the Joshua Tree people and the Achtung Baby people. And make no mistakes, Joshua Tree is a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece. But for me, I didn't really become a massive U2 fan until Achtung Baby came out. I had it on cassette, and I just could not stop playing it. The videos, with the big fly shades, really just changed my life. Just completely changed my life. That album, I go back to and I listen to it, and it's just, do I think it's the greatest album, the greatest rock album of all time? Yes, I do. I think bar none, this is the greatest album that plays from start to finish than anything else in my catalog. If you can find a better album, let me know. But it was just the perfect balance between kind of super catchy, sort of, radio friendly commercial, but also artistically, and the production on this, and Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno, just brilliant. Of course, the heart-stopping One has really been a greater song written than One. Yeah, probably not. I could be wrong. Achtung Baby. We've seen U2 a bunch of times. Probably the biggest show, or maybe the most special one, was we saw them in an outdoor show in Montreal, and there was 80,000 people in attendance. And there's 40,000 in the stands and 40,000 in a standing room. We were in the standing room. It was the second of two shows that we saw, and it was the most perfect summer night. And they were touring No Line on the horizon, but they had kind of realized that album wasn't really going anywhere, so it became like a greatest hits night. And of course, they played the entire Achtung Baby record. They were playing Joshua Tree. It was just one of those most magnificent nights that you can remember. I'm getting down to my final four here. Next up, I've talked about this guy before. You can see the poster in behind me. Peter Gabriel, Us. Now, a lot of people would say Peter Gabriel, So was the album, and I do love that album. But Us kind of just took it to another level, and really this is when I became a massive Peter Gabriel fan. This album doesn't play like an album, and when you listen to Peter Gabriel, you're not even listening to music. It's like somebody's painting the most beautiful picture inside of your head. It's just a surreal experience, and Peter's known for working on his albums for not weeks, not months, but years. But you can hear it in the final product. I'd rather have an amazing Peter Gabriel album every 20 years than an okay one every month. And, in today's society where people are constantly, and artists especially, are feeling like they have to put out new content continuously. Well, does that mean that's all going to be good because you're putting it out faster? Probably not. And this album, Us, just a work of absolute genius. Secret World, Blood of Eden, Come Talk to Me. I mean, just an incredible album. Don't know too many artists that use a deduk on their popular albums. Is that where Hans Zimmer got the influence for Gladiator? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Could be. Genius. Getting down to the final three. We got The Police, Synchronicity. Their last studio album before they imploded. Truth be told, if you've seen any documentaries or you've read any articles, you knew that they were constantly at each other's throats. Rarely ever got along. But Synchronicity is just one of those superb albums. Again, I had it on cassette. I used to listen to Every Breath You Take, and then I would fast forward through King of Pain, and that would play Wrapped Around Your Finger, and I would go back and I would just listen to those two songs. And then I listened to the rest of the album, like, oh, dude, why are you fast forwarding, man? Just an incredible album. What can you say about, Sting, Stuart Copeland, and Andy Summers, other than the three of those guys together, put together arguably one of the greatest bands of all time, with one of the most unique sounds of all time. It was a band, make no mistake about it. I get it. Sting wrote, 99% of the music that they put out, but they performed as a band. And just incredible. Something about those three guys getting together. The production on this album, the recording engineering on this album is just, it's so clean and so perfect. It almost has a hypnotic quality to it. So Synchronicity, absolute genius. And we continue with that theme with our 8th album, Sting, 10 Summoner's Tales. Now, if you were to ask most fans, they would probably say Sting Soul Cages, which is probably his most personal album, and it is a genius album. But 10 Summoner's Tales, again, was that balance of catchy stuff that could be heard on the radio, which I like, and also very, very artistic. Again, the production is top-notch. If I Were to Lose My Faith in You is probably one of the most edgy songs that he put out post-Police. You got the absolutely gorgeous Fields of Gold. You have multiple time signatures on this album. It's just one of those incredible albums. One of my most favorite albums of all time. Shape of My Heart, which I think was written, the guitar part was written by Dominic Miller, and he gave it to Sting. He went for a walk and he came back and he had all the lyrics for it. I mean, come on. Just one of those incredible albums. I've seen Sting, I don't know how many times live, seen the Police live a couple of times on the reunion tour. And dude is probably the last true songwriting genius of our time. And he's got a new album coming out. I'll be curious to hear it. I'm cautiously optimistic, but it's pretty hard when you've put out stuff like his solo stuff and you put out Synchronicity. It's pretty hard. It's like people want you two to go out. Well, could you just go out and write another Actung Baby? Could you just go and do another Joshua Tree? It doesn't work like that, man. Those are things that just come along. It's like a comet that just burns through the sky. Can you just have another comet? It doesn't work like that, man. Come on. Lastly, and some of you might be surprised by this, and I'm going to get to a little bit personal story about this, but is Bryan Adams' Reckless. Okay? Again, had this on cassette when I was a kid. Now, why Bryan Adams? Quite a bit different than most of the other stuff that's on this list. Well, Bryan Adams is one of those incredible songsmiths, if that's a word. He has an incredible ear for a hook and a melody. His voice live is always pitch perfect. He's an incredible entertainer, so full of energy. He's just one of those guys. You know, you go and see him live now, and it's just as good as when he saw him 30 years ago. Dude is taking care of himself. Now, this album in particular has significance for me because it was the first live show that I ever saw. Was part of the Reckless tour. I think it was 1985 in Philadelphia when I saw Bryan Adams. My first show, it was an outdoor show. It poured rain the entire time. Just a colossal rainstorm. Buckets and buckets of rain the entire time. We were standing on these chairs, just getting drenched. I think my dad had a leather jacket that got completely ruined. I don't think he was very happy about that. And it was electrifying, mind-blowing. The crowd, you know, it was at, one of the highest points of his career, although he would go on to even greater fame, of course, through Everything I Do For You, which is in the Guinness Book of World Records. But that album, Reckless, is just one of those amazing albums. Case in point, Bruce Springsteen sometimes covers Bryan Adams songs. So, come on, if the boss is covering your songs, you're doing pretty well. Bryan is also an incredible photographer, which a lot of people don't know about, and he's done tons of charity books. And it's another passion for me. I think he's just one of those guys that obsesses about whatever it is that he's doing and just becomes extremely good at it. He's been, consistently putting out albums. Are they as good as his old stuff? Well, that's up to you to decide. And I'll tell you one more story about him. So when I was 21, I was going back home to my parents' house because my father had a brain tumor. And I was basically coming back home to say goodbye. I was 21. This was taken on my 21st birthday. This is the plane stub. I'll show you. And it is signed by none other than Bryan Adams. So I was in the airport and I was waiting for my flight, and of course just flooded with emotions about seeing my family and seeing my dad. And it was the most difficult time in my life by far. And as I'm thinking about all these things, I look over and I see all these guys in like these big black bomber jackets, and they look familiar. And I look over and I'm like, man, that looks just like Bryan Adams. That's really weird. And I look over and I'm like, man, that's Bryan Adams. So I finally got the nerve to go up and I said something and blah, I don't know. I was kind of mumbling, and I think I asked him if he had anything with him that he could sign. He's like, no, I don't have anything. So I just like left. I was like, man, I got to get him to sign something. What am I thinking? So I went back and I pulled out my plane ticket stub, and he signed it. And it's a very, very special thing for me because my first rock show that I've ever seen, I'm a huge, huge Bryan Adams fan. And then I meet him on my 21st birthday when I'm going to see my father who's sick. It's hard to get much more personal or special than that. So he will always have a special place in my heart. We plan on taking our kids to go and see him. If you haven't seen Bryan Adams live, he's as good as he's ever been. Just great, great rock and roll fun, and just an incredible talent for finding a melody and a hook, and just an incredible live performer. So what can I say? So that's it, my friends. Those are 9 of the most influential albums of my life. And I'd love to know what some of your favorite albums are. Drop them in the comments. You don't have to agree with any of the ones that I put out. Frequently, people have disagreed with me, especially when I used to work in the record store and we're trying to decide what music to put on. And that's kind of part of the fun. So, and if you're fans of any of these records or any of these bands, let me know. Check out Deaf by Records by my good friend Jason Buston, who's got a great channel, and he's constantly reviewing vinyl. I've not gotten into vinyl. I've kind of moved sadly into the digital realm, although it's been a little bit sad putting all of these CDs to rest. But we're not getting rid of them. We're just cataloging them, getting rid of the jewel cases, and we're keeping the inserts and the CDs because I just, for the life of me, couldn't get rid of them. Because you spend your entire life kind of collecting these albums, and they kind of hold a special significance to you. So I hearken back to a time where albums and CDs held a great, great, not just monetary value, but a sentimental value, which I think is sorely missing from music nowadays in the digital realm. Are we going to be able to get that back? I don't know. I hope so, because it's different than just downloading or streaming something on Spotify or Apple Music and then just being done with it and then going on to the next thing. It's like we've all become people with extremely short attention spans, and we used to have to line up for these albums on a Tuesday release day and maybe get our hands on a copy, and that's missing. And I hope that somehow we can bring that back. That is my hope, because if you're watching this channel, you'll know that how much music means to me, and I'm sure that it means just as much to you. So anyway, go out there, make some music, listen to some music. In the comments, drop some of your favorite albums, favorite songs. Let me know what you're into. If you have CDs, if you have vinyl, I'd love to know what you're listening to, what you're checking out. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Stay safe, my friends.